Hello, and welcome to Ideas with Diana, January 18th, 2021, on the second podcast of the day. What I'd like to do is just continue on one theme that I did from the last one regarding climate change, and also talk about technology and culture as a second subject. Well, regarding climate change, I said that basically that I do agree climate change exists and that we do need to do something about it. Also, I did mention that we should enter the Paris Climate Change Accord conditionally. There's a reason why I say conditions because as I talk with friends, a lot of people say, well, we want $15 an hour now. We want global health care now. We want open borders now. We want basically complete climate update now. Well, okay. Well, all those are good ideas. And they're welcome. They're things that we should do as society. However, let me put it this way too. To some who served in the military, especially Navy, you're going to understand this analogy more than possibly others. But so I'll try to make it so everyone will understand. Okay, well in the Navy, you have a ship as a carrier. Let's say this is a carrier. Okay, okay, a carrier is a pretty big ship because when you're landing a plane coming down at 200 knots or 250 knots like that, coming down and grabbing this tripwire and then just stopping. Just so it doesn't and stop, having the tripwire stop its momentum and everything. Or basically when you have a plane catapulting off, for planes to land, jet planes to land in something, they need a certain length of runway. Well, what happens when you calculate that out, basically a battleship a carrier is a pretty long ship. It's pretty very long. So, okay, so let's some people think of doing things like you're in a little basically 4-meter boat. Okay, here we are. We're gonna do a 180 now. We can do it like this. Just go like that. No, okay. Well, that's fine. But let me get a prop to show you. Okay, here's the prop. This is our battleship of the ship of state. We want to do nationalized health care. We want to do $15 minimum wage. We want to do complete climate change accord. We want to do open borders. We want to do other things that benefit society, eliminate meat or something. Or, okay, we want to do a 180. Okay, well, based on physics, this thing can't go like this because basically when you're in the water, and you weigh millions of tons of displacement. Nope, you can't do it like this little dinghy that can just go and turn like this. What you have to do is, let me show you. We'll start from here because it's going to take a while. You have this battleship. It's going. It wants to turn. Start turning. Just listen to my voice. Turning. Start turning. Well, based on this scale, if this were a battleship and it had to do a 180, my apartment's by the West Racine Post Office. I would have to go all the way out to Kinsey, which is a little bit past Washington Avenue. It's about 1.5 miles for this model battleship to completely turn around and do a 180. And that's the problem that exists with the ship of state. The ship of state is not designed to do and can't do radical turns because think of it. In the US, we have, 1776, so 224. We have 244 years of representative government American style. Now, if we go back to the United Kingdom, Magna Carta, I think that was 1260. So Let's see, 740. So England has 760 years of representative government, and to do things, um, you can't do it. You can't do it completely. It does take time. But what you can do is you can do little things completely. You can do things conditionally. And part of the things of doing conditionally means like with climate change. First, I give credit to President Trump that he got us in energy independent. We don't pay $4 a gallon for gas anymore, and also what happens, we don't have to be so dependent on OPEC that basically the moment they snap their fingers, we have to jump in and sort of give in to what they say. We can say, fine, we have other options to get our energy. We'll see if you're the best bidder, and basically. That's where this fracking comes in, and this fracking pipeline comes in. I mean, I've heard that one executive acts to cancel this fracking pipeline. Well, I sure hope that basically people really think about this, because fracking has allowed us to become energy independent. I agree, like any energy technology, it's not perfect. There's always side effects, but what happens though, basically. We should before we cancel out something that's giving us energy independence, we should also allow ourselves to develop something else so we don't get stuck in the lurch. Like when we canceled the shuttle program and we didn't have any way to get up to the space station, except basically hitch a ride with the Russian Space Agency, which I'm glad they did it in the interest of science and still do. And that, but the point is, though, you have to have at least two ways to do things before you decide to basically go completely and say, no, I'm going to let executive order, I'm going to cancel this out. Well, no. Got to have a second and third way how to do things before you do that, in my opinion. But, the thing is, energy independence is an important point. I mean, basically, it's a lot of people will be glad that basically we are energy independent because of fracking. I do realize that there's some issues with it. Fine. Okay. That doesn't mean that you have to shut something down. You work out the issues. I mean, basically, like basically when we built the interstate originally, there are issues about people worried about the interstate. Well, this is going to destroy this whole neighborhood and everything else. Eisenhower was still able to build interstates. He still went through. He resolved the issues to make sure that everyone was taken care of and compensated, so no one lost their homes. And we did develop a good interstate system in that. So. So that's why I'm hoping people do think about this. And the other thing, lastly, about the ship estate thing, sometimes I feel, just in my own personal opinion, that when I hear things about something's environmentally what's being proposed, I sometimes wonder about whether people really understand about the impact on how this is going to be basically on people who live a lower income, who live a fixed income, excuse me, or people who are not part of their clique, now that part of this environmental clique, who have the resources to live anyway with any type of higher food prices or anything else. Because, like for example, the push to eliminate hamburger and cows, eliminate global warming. We need to eat so much meat. Even friends of mine who are vegetarians, and even friends of my parents who are vegetarians, they went off the wagon a few times, eating pizza and other things, because they realized they had to have so much meat in the diet, just that we are carnivores and we do have to have some. The other point, though, is what happens is, let's say they come out with this meat hamburger or whatever, or okay, and then at first they introduce it at a low price, but then when people find out how much it really costs to eat vegetarian, they have to pay 3 times more for this meat burger than this regular hamburger, and they get less nutrition and other stuff, and they don't get all the nutrition they're supposed to get. Well, they can take supplements. Well, okay, people get these supplements. How much do they have to pay for them? Well, they have to pay okay, well, basically with all this hodgepodge, as normally doesn't work. So, I mean, that's what I'm saying. Let's think out our environmental policies and let's try to get back to common sense approaches, because in the 70s, when I went to college, late 70s and early 80s when I went to college, in the computer world, We used a lot of punch cards. We used a lot of punch tape, green bar paper, if many people remember that. And what happened was, well, the first thing what we did basically at the university I went to, Parkside was designed to be ecologically friendly starting in 1968. So we could to continue our ecological friendliness. Okay, we listened to Barry Commoner. We saw some of the videotapes. We saw some of the very extreme ones, and we said, no, we don't want to do it that way. We want to basically not scare people. We want to show people that this can be done, so it doesn't feel like you're living in a 1984 or you're living in a dystopian movie. So what we did is, okay, what's the simple thing we could start first? If you don't need them, don't feed them. When you're done using the loom, you shut off the light. When you need to use the loom, you turn on the light. Or another thing is, if the loom's going to be completely dark, what you do then is basically you get a penny a day night light that you put in a socket so that there's enough light people can see where the light switch is, and there's enough and that way that saves energy too. Second thing we did, well, at that time we used a lot of punch cards. They went to, some were the size of this, some were like the RPG 72 cards, but many of them were like the let's see if I can make it pop again. Just bear with me for a moment. It's just gonna do some origami. Actually, let's do some origami here for a moment. And I know I should have these done when I go on the show, but I like to do things ad lib quite a bit. Okay, well, also we had which was like this, which was the old 80 column IBM punch cards. What happens is you had 80 columns, like each of these represented a character, or each of these represented a byte, 8 bits, all the way across 80 columns. And you had a punch card machine, and then you put a machine in, the machine went like, you had a big deck machine, and eventually you read the whole thing through. And so, okay, so again, what we thought, well, just like we did the light switch, if you don't need them, don't feed them. And so we thought, okay, how can we do this? We can make this like with paper, the punch cards, the RPG cards, printout. Let's see, let me get something here. Printouts. How could we solve it on this one? Okay, well, the printouts were quite easy. First thing we did was we noticed that basically in the printouts, when many students in computer science and business school like programs, or even professionals today, our programs are not completely perfect when we write them. There are always errors. There's always things we wish we could have done better, but mostly it's errors. And one of those days you had to print it out because you really couldn't see what was on the screen. Wouldn't show you the list print, so you had to print it out, a listing on it. So what happens? We go through the list and find, okay, oh, whoops, I forgot to put a semicolon there, and I should have had an end statement here, and I should have had a begin there. Okay, so what happens? You go down circle lines. Okay, line 173, put a semicolon. Line 201, put an end statement. Line 275, put a begin statement, and then you run your programs again. Well, and then what happens is basically you may have another error, and so you generate a whole new ream of paper and you look at it. It's like, and what happened was what we finally did is we said, well, okay, look, since most of the printouts being generated are test printouts to make sure that the program runs in the correct errors, how about we do it this way? We had 2 printers. So what we did is we took one printer. This was a draft printer. So basically what we did was, like, when one ream of paper was all printed out, we flipped it over and printed on the other side because this was just for draft purposes. The other printer was the final program copy that you submitted to submitted for your class, to your professor. That basically that shows that your program runs all the test data. So what we did was we had a draft printer where we used the other side of paper, and then we had this final printer where we used basically the did the good quality. Well, then after a while, we thought a little bit further. We started to get letters from people hearing about what we're doing at Parkside as far as being recycling and being energy efficient, following Barry Commoner's ideas. And they said, one company that Lotus said, well, we take all this paper that people throw away and we recycle it. We have recycled green bar paper. Are you guys interested? Yeah, send it to us. So what we did, we started using recycled green bar paper. So basically, we still had the draft printer. We used recycled green bar paper, print on one side. When it's done, you swift it over, print on the other side for drafts. And then we had the final printer with recycled green bar paper. And so what happens, we did recycling two different ways by basically printing on both sides of paper for drafts, one side for final, but also using recycling green bar. And we were one of the first universities in the area to do this and the first large organizations to do this. Now, this is what I consider responsible climate change, Paris Accord things, because some of the things that are proposed in the Paris Accord, I mean, it's like, there's some well-intentioned people that were under 18 talking and said, we got to do this. We got to do this now. Our house is burning. It's yes, dear, our house is burning. But however, even a fireman will tell you that there's certain protocols you have to follow to make sure that you don't endanger people and neighbors while trying to put out a burning house. And eventually it took to the point, which I like very much what Vogue did. Vogue picked people who were 18 and over that actually spoke their own views so that everyone knew that or didn't have suspicions of someone being manipulated. But the point is, though, the people who are over 18, even they realize what some of us older adults were saying is, yes, we agree with you on a few things. However, you have to understand, due to the shipper state, we can't just flip it at a moment's notice and impact people and say, well, tough. You lost your livelihood, and your village lost your livelihood because we eliminated coal and other things. And well, we'll try to figure something out for you in a few months. Well, okay, how are those people going to survive? They say, well, you can get a job. Oh, well, our village has lived this way for 150 years, and right now it's very hard to get a job during COVID. Well, it's up to you. You got to figure it out. No, that's not what a government's supposed to do. A government's supposed to support all people, make sure that decisions does not have consequences that basically pander to one side and leave another side starving for survival. So that's why I'm saying, Paris Climate Accord, conditionally, and also that we keep fracking. I know some people can be very mad at me for saying this. I'm used to nasty comments on Facebook. Go right ahead. Defend me, block me, go ahead. I've had others who offended me because I did say these comments. So I'm a big person. I'm an adult. You can see I'm quite sturdy. So and what happens? I'm not going to take it personally. I'm glad that you express your free, but as long as you express it peacefully, you don't do any violence to anyone. You don't plan any type of insurgencies, and also you don't steal. Remember those three things. Now, the second part I'd like to mention about is essentially that technology and culture. At the time I started in the computer revolution in the 70s, and even at the late 60s and 69, because we actually had a teletype with GE Computer Service in the home because my dad was basing executive working at our auto parts supplier, and he needed to do calculations for mufflers and other stuff, and basically, so what happens? I learned to program in BASIC using a teletype connected to a GE mainframe. We had a paper punch, and my dad gave me a program to type in that printed a picture of Snoopy, and that's how I first started BASIC. Well, at that time, computer culture consisted of two major areas. As either Route 128, which someone has told me it has been changed. I can't remember right now what the new name is, but Route 128 in Boston, or when it was originally made, some people called it to go to nowhere because nothing was out there. But eventually, a lot of computer companies settled out there, and also Silicon Valley. And at that time, basically, there are two schools of thought. There's the Boston School, and I'll call it the Silicon Valley School as to how things are done. And then the Boston School is basically structured programming, basically trying to coexist with the mainframe world by having mini computers. The California school was that everyone should have their own computer, so everyone had a microcomputer or basically their own home computer. And then basically, eventually, as the 80s came into the 90s, basically, the California school basically sort of absorbed the Boston school, and so many things moved out to San Francisco. But now, what's the newest thing that's coming is what I call the Austin school, which basically means that basically some people realize, well, it really was fun when we used to manufacture, when we used to do our own R&D and manufacture stuff rather than farm it out to China, in other places. And, we actually made it better. So what some of these people did, I think, is some of them moved over to Austin, where they can actually still build their own computers, make their own R&D. Like when I watched Austin City Limits, Cirrus Logic has a place out there where they can make their own music chips and they make their own music products. Barco Dell is out there as well. HP makes their own computers out there. Dell makes their own computers. This podcast is done on a Dell computer, a Dell Experian Gamer with RX video and FX 7th gen AMD processor. Very happy with it. And the thing is, well, now considering this, what this is showing though is basically even areas that basically think that basically they'll never shrink, eventually do, because basically sometimes they shrink because just of natural business cycle. Every business has growth decline like this as it has this curve, but sometimes they shrink just because basically they get too big for themselves, and basically another group comes and says, well, hey, if you come here, we can help you do this, and we won't give you all the runaround and everything else that you have to do over here. And but in a way though, I'm glad to still see that there are two schools of thought like that. That there's Austin School and I'll call this the remainder of the old Silicon Valley School, because right now, when people think of what's really done in San Francisco. It's what's really done in San Francisco as far as computers is really marketing, some financing, and basically a little bit of beginning graphic arts design as to how to design the modules and everything. But regarding the actual skunk works of making the first R&D prototype, making the first short-run production product. Basically someone who's a CEO like me, basically, not dressed in a suit and tie, dressed casually, working shirt sleeve, like they used to say in NASA, working shirt sleeve, showing your arm because you're working in the field, experimenting. That's more done in Austin now than it is in San Francisco. And in a way, basically, I'm glad that Austin and San Francisco still can coexist, because in this current situation environment we've had, glad to see at least peaceful coexistence still is there. But it does show that basically things do change, and I'm glad that basically it has changed sort of gradually, and it has changed basically with just a mesh, without no one's making a fist, no one's trying to break through a window or anything else like that. Nope, just peaceful coexistence, peaceful. And also even in Texas, which many of us knew a long time ago who are Republican, is that Texas does support the transgender and the pride flag. They have a long time ago. Many people who worked in the military, many people who worked in technology and other things knew it too, like that. It's just basically, again, how to express yourself to those of a population who may not understand or may originally feel frightened. The best way was basically like was mentioned on Star Trek with Operation Earth. You go in, you work as a member of the community, and you show that you're not going to bite. You're not there to take over. You're not there to try to force people to your will. You're a citizen as everyone else is, and you care about your community as everyone else does too, and you help your community, and that's how it was done. And the thing is, um, what's sort of strange though is it can be very odd being someone who's LGBT and Republican because but just before I continue, you'll notice in this podcast I don't have my wig on. Part of the reason I don't is because I suffer from heat issues, and that and sometimes just wearing a wig all the time, and when I have my the bright lights for doing a podcast on, it can get very hot and very very hard for me and other people. So that's sometimes why you see us without a wig, or sometimes you'll see us with a white hat, during the summer as well too, or but the point is, being Republican and LGBT, what does that mean? Well, some people feel that means I'm supporting pushing people back in a closet. No, I'm not supporting people pushing people back in a closet. No, I'm actually supporting people being allowed to be more of their true selves. You shouldn't have to feel that you have to align with one group because you are expressing yourself. You still, just because you're LGBT, you have a right to pick how you vote, whether you want to vote Democratic, Independent, Republican, whatever. That's fine. That's fine. But if someone tells me, well, you're LGBT and you should vote Democrat, sorry, because you told me I should is the reason why I won't. And the reason why is because as part of being American, you have a right as an adult to choose which party you're going to vote for, and it's up to the party to convince you why you should vote for them, not intimidate you why you should vote for them. However, again, even though I may disagree with basically some people who try intimidation to get people to vote for some, I do not approve of violence. I do not approve of stealing. I do not approve of insurrection whatsoever. Like what happened on January 6th, I was very shocked. Very shocked indeed. I thought that basically we were a stronger country than this. But I do hope, basically what's coming in the future, I do hope we can get back to a point where basically things just become boring. Basically that basically people don't get so hepped up that they feel that they're gonna go out and attack like that. That's not how you get done. Because some of these new historians say, "Oh yeah, things are done by being attacked." Well, now you have to remember though, in the American Revolution, we as Americans did not fire the first shot. We were fired upon. Also, even after we were fired upon in Lexington, we continued to negotiate with the then British Crown, consisting of King George III and his Parliament, to try to find a reconciliation. We tried that all the way up, even up to 1777. And then the decision was made to finally break away from the British Empire. However, again, all this was we acted in self-defense. To form a new country. We did not aggressively attack people, and that's a difference between what happened this last summer, where people were aggressively attacked by some protesters claiming they wanted their rights, but yet they broke in stores, they burned stores, they stole stuff. Kenosha, Chicago, other cities, you name it. That has to stop. You want to protest for your rights? Fine. I'll go like I said, as long as you're nonviolent, you don't steal, and you don't hurt people. And also, another thing means you keep an open attitude. So basically, if I were to come to come and just observe what you're saying, I wouldn't have to worry about any of your members pointing out and say, "Oh, there's privileged whitey." No, the United States is no. If you really want to improve the United States, we got to drop the word privilege. If you're going to do that, you're perpetuating an old world stereotype that's going to make things worse. First thing you got to do is basically we're either all Americans or we're not, and we all are Americans. So we should solve this together as Americans. So there's no such thing as basically this group or that group. We don't subdivide ourselves. We either are Americans or we're not. Because when you go to a foreign country does not subdivide us when we travel to a foreign country. We're identified as Americans, period. So, and that's how we have to solve things. But again, peacefully, nonviolent. Also, when other people express their viewpoint, you don't bite their head off. You don't try to humiliate. You don't try to intimidate. You allow everyone to have their free speech, even though it may be objectionable, because it is part of the limit. But however, if someone does give free speech that says attack someone or basically hurt someone, that's not protected free speech. That's different. But we really should start by really having scholars on both sides of the aisle. Please let everyone in the various subgroups know what exactly is limited protected free speech, precisely. So, because I think we do need to be re-educated on this based on what I've seen. Well, let me know what you think. The website I have are two, Diana 1A and Ideas with Diana, Ideas with an S, so IDEAS with Diana, all one word. But that's sometimes why I use the Diana 1A website. It's sometimes easier. So I prefer to receive your comments by Twitter, and I will have this posted on Facebook, Twitter, and again on YouTube. Just remember, if you want to find this on YouTube, my user account is Diana1K2. So I'd like to thank you for watching, and I'd like to wish everyone a good week.